Welcome to the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. Now, here's your hosts, B. Cox and the crew.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. It's a perspective of the classics from a fresh point of view. We appreciate you for taking your time and lending your ears to our perspective. You could be anywhere listening to anything, but you're right here with us, so we thank you. With you today is yours truly, B. Cox, and with me, you know him well. He is the creator and host of the Raw Sex Podcast. Each and every Friday, make sure you are checking us out and checking him out on social media as well. I'm talking about none other than Cousin Domo, aka Dominique Marks. Check out Raw Sex Podcast, of course, on Instagram, and also Raw Sex Podcast 1 on Twitter. My man has all the great hot takes on there. It's very entertaining feed. And you get all the stuff on there leading up there about on Raw Sex. I mean, we have great topics on there. You know, we had a topic about threesomes. We also talked about GOAT with Uncle Dolly as well, the GOAT debate between Jordan and LeBron. So make sure y'all go and checking that out, man. My boy, Cousin Domo, of course, on the Raw Sex Podcast every Friday. Go check it out, of course, and subscribe. As we always say, support is free. Yes, it's 100% free, so make sure y'all like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and show that support out there and follow Raw Sex Podcast. As a reminder, you can always go to vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. You can go there, check out all of our past episodes. Also, check out our guest page on there as well to see some of the guests we've had in the past. Our merchandise shop, still up there, guys. Like we said, shirts, t-shirts, tumblers, keychains, coffee mugs, all up there, iPhone cases. Make sure you go to our store and check out all of the merchandise that we have there and cop some to support your boy. And if you do, make sure you hit us up on social media and tag us when you get it so that you can get some flicks and we make sure that we show y'all some love. As we always say here on the Vault, our motto is hashtag open the vault, hashtag MBTC, or nothing but the classics. So today, we're going to go back 25 years ago, Damo. We're going to go back to a very critical date. That's June 9th, 1998, and the second studio album of none other than Brandy, Never Say Never, released on Atlantic Records, recorded between October 1997 and April 1998 at a number of different studios, just a few to name: Pacifique, Record One, Sony in Los Angeles, Chartmaker in Malibu, The Enterprise in Burbank, The Hit Factory in New York City, Barking Doctor in Mount Kisco, and DARP in Atlanta, with a runtime of 66 minutes and 36 seconds. The producers on this, Brandy herself. This also introduced a collaboration between herself and Rodney Darkchild Jerkins, his brother Fred Jerkins III, Dallas Austin, David Foster as well, Harvey Mason Jr., Lashawn Daniels, Marc Nelson, Guy Roche, and many others as well on this project. Singles from the album. The first and the biggest single probably from the album, and one of the biggest singles of that year and of the 90s, the duet with Monica, the infamous now The Boy Is Mine, released on May 5th, 1998. The second single featuring Bad Boys Mace, Top of the World, released July 7th, 1998. The ballad Have You Ever, released October 6th, 1998. One of my favorites, Almost Doesn't Count, released in March of 1999. The fifth, You Don't Know Me Like You Used To, released September of 1999. And Everything That I Do It For You, the remake of the famous smash ballad by Bryan Adams in 1991, was released on November of 1999. So Never Say Never, Damo. Second album by Brandy. And just to go and give an update of where we were during this time, or a review of where we were during this time, this was Brandy's follow-up from her self-titled debut, Brandy, which came out late in 1994, where she burst onto the scene. Big singles with I Wanna Be Down and Baby, and also Best Friend. But it really kind of put her right into the marketplace and established her as an up-and-coming star. Then you take that, and a couple of years after that, Brandy starts in her own sitcom, Moesha, which starts in 1996. In between this time, she's also acting in other movies. She's in the Cinderella movie. She was in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So she's also sort of dabbling in acting as well. But in the meanwhile, she has to follow up with her sophomore album. So she starts working on this in late 1997. The biggest challenge that she had was outdoing a massive debut. And for those of y'all who were out listening and around during that time, if you knew like how big that first album was, it was huge. I mean, those singles were huge. The singles are still classics to this day. When you have someone who has a big debut like that, sometimes the biggest challenge is making sure that you don't become a one-hit wonder and you don't suffer that sophomore slump. Big part of this was linking her up with Rodney Jerkins and also his team, including his brother Fred, other producers and writers such as Harvey Mason Jr. and Lashawn Daniels. This was a strategic move on the side of Atlantic to sort of get her a chance to sort of change her style up a little bit and also change up her sound. But then it was also involving other writers such as Marc Nelson, famously of As Yet and formerly also of the original Boyz II Men group, David Foster, Canadian producer and writer, and as well as writer extraordinaire Diane Warren, who did songs such as Because You Love Me by Celine Dion and Unbreak My Heart by Toni Braxton. It really was a big risk trying to change her sound from one album to the next, because that sound on her first album is what a lot of fans thought made her successful, but it was a gamble that would pay off in so many different ways for her. So we're going to go ahead right now and get into it.
First thoughts and reflections.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started with you, Domo. So Never Say Never. This is coming out, I want to say probably, this probably is right around the end of your first year in Bowie and right around the end of my sophomore year. And so we're heading into that summer and this album is getting ready to drop right before we're about to head out of school for the summertime. So give us your reflections on this album, what you thought about it when it first came out, and then listening to it back then and also in the time since it's passed. What are your reactions and also reflections of the album now that it's 25?
25 years. Man. Whew, the time is flying.
It is, isn't it?
Because when you told me we doing this album, I was like, I went and looked. I said, when did this come out? I was like, 98. I said, damn. But it's definitely the end of our school year, and all my cousins, they all was the R&B folks. So that's all I would listen to with them when they get in the car for the most part. Probably 90% of the time, they would put on R&B because they all could sing.
Yeah.
So God didn't bless me with that talent.
Yeah, I know.
I get drunk. I think I can.
Yeah.
Catch me at a karaoke night. Hey.
Yeah. Oh, but you know, people like us, God knew not to give us talent to sing.
Oh, yeah,
nah.
He couldn't do that. Yeah, he couldn't do that. He knew better.
He knew better.
Yeah, he knew better. To be honest with you, when I listened to the album, I remember the hits, the singles off the album. But all the other songs, I might not have listened to this album since 98, 99 for real. Like, I went to listen Full Moon, the next album, that's my shit. So I listen to that joint. I say I can listen to that joint like once a year, every couple of years. I haven't listened to Full Moon in a minute. Let me go throw that joint on. But this one, I really forgot all about it. I had to listen to it when you told me about it. I said, let me go put it on. I said, oh shit, I might have slept on this album.
Oh yeah.
I said, yeah, this show got some Jones on. It's some heat on here. I said, yo. Yeah. Besides the singles, and as we all know, you know, Brandy, top tier vocalist.
Oh yeah.
Like it ain't that really. It's maybe 3 other people that got the vocals that she have. That's about it for real.
The range too.
Yeah. Other than that, you already know what you're gonna get. But it was definitely it didn't even feel like 60 minutes for real when I was listening to it. I was like, oh yeah, this is it right here. I don't remember none of it back then, but listening to it this week, I was like, oh yeah, I should have had this joint in the rotation.
Yeah, true. Yeah, man. There was a lot going on in that year. 98 was a year when a lot of great R&B albums dropped and a lot of great debuts dropped during 98. People have to remember during 98, this is the folks who dropped during that year. You had Jagged Edge, Destiny's Child, all dropping their debut albums. Escape, Traces of My Lipstick, dropping during this time. You also had during this time, dropping later on that year, Whitney Houston, Your Love Is My Love. Drew Hill's Enter the Drew, and then Room 112 dropped that year too. So you want to talk about a lot of smash R&B albums during that year that dropped. It's crazy. This drops, and it's dropping during the summertime. Oh, not even to mention as well that Brandy drops this album along with Monica's The Boy Is Mine. So this drops all during that summer. I live with sisters, as you know, and my sisters were big Brandy fans, right? I mean, they were huge fans of the debut. But when this joint dropped, it was on constant rotation all the time, either when we were in the house or in the car. I grew an appreciation for this album by sitting and listening to this. I hate to even have to say it, in the quiet moments, really. It was in the quiet moments, really being able to study and listen to this album, even like when I was 16 years old, away from all the noise and everything else, that I really started to gain perspective from this. And the teaming of her and Darkchild was just such a perfect pairing. You want to talk about as far as like producers that are made for singers? I like to always say that Tim was sort of made for Aaliyah's sound beyond just her debut, right? How Tim's production took Aaliyah's work to the next level. I think that Rodney did the same exact thing for Brandy with this album and his production. And it wasn't just it wasn't just him. It was his team. It was his brother Fred. It was Harvey Mason Jr. It was writers like Lashawn Daniels. They all helped to craft this album and gave it a bigger, better sound. Sound-wise, I thought it was perfect because it showed her maturity. She wasn't just like the 15-year-old little girl, 16-year-old little girl anymore. She had become an actress. She was also becoming, at this point, sort of like a businesswoman in some sort of respect. And then not only that, it also showed her vulnerability. She had been through a couple of different relationships during this time. You know, of course, you know that she had, I guess, had some things with Kobe at some point in time. Knew they went to prom together. There was supposedly the relationship between her and Wanye from Boys to Men. A lot of different things happened in between that, but it showed her vulnerability. Lyrically, it was candid, and it was crafted with her life in mind. And I think that when you talk about music, specifically when you talk about R&B music, when you craft the music with the life of the person in mind, you get some of the best work. Look at that with My Life with Mary J. Blige and so many different other albums we could talk about that are in that mold. It was also crafted with her audience in mind. Think about who Brandy's audience was when her debut came out in 1994. We were all getting older too, right? We were starting to mature too. So considering that everything she went through, Rodney thought that it was important that she had some input on this album, that she started to help write this album. And that was something that would help her serve her later in her career. It's also an album, when listening to it back then and even now, it really shows her growth musically. Like, that first album really was something kind of trying to build on that whole hip-hop soul vibe that Mary sort of started. Really came out like right around 91, 92. You could feel that. The production on that album is ridiculous. You take that and then it starts to transition more into I would have dare to say a pop sound, but it almost was like a sound that it was pop, but it didn't sell out. Like, it wasn't like, it was crossover, but it wasn't like, oh, now you just trying to do the music for the white folks. Like, no, it was just like a blend, like almost as expertly as Rodney could to make something sound pop, but not make it sound bubblegum. So that was really important, helped her maintain her image, because not only did that help her with her own audience, i.e. the urban and black audience, but it also helped to take some white people that may have not paid attention to Brandy that much and be like, oh, damn, this is damn good music. I'm thinking about songs you listen to, songs like Almost Doesn't Count, and songs like Truthfully, and also like Learn the Hard Way, where people are like, oh, okay, this is Brandy. Everybody, when they talk about this album, makes a lot out of the first single, The Boy Is Mine, right? Because that's the big thing. I mean, that was that duo, like, where did you go that summer that you could not hear that song anywhere? The boy is mine, the boy is mine. The boy is mine, the boy is mine. That intro that we all heard on the radio. Like, you hear that song on the radio, that video that came out that summertime, it was all over the place. The fact that it was #1 on the Billboard charts for 13 weeks was crazy, right? But if you look at the whole project, like you mentioned yourself, it's a well-balanced and a full project. It doesn't lack in style and substance. This album, for me, without a doubt for me, I like Full Moon, and I think that Full Moon is up there with me too, but if I had to place which one was better, for me, I think this is better to me. At least I think I favor this one more.
You might be right.
Yeah.
You might be right. Full Moon got a couple of tracks that you can like take up off of there. I'm not really certain there's too many tracks that you could take off of this album. Maybe one. This may be like one throwaway that I probably would take off of here, but then Brandy voice make it that you can't throw it away.
Can't throw it away.
She's still delivering.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that what this did? A lot of people say that Full Moon helped to establish her as the vocal Bible, but I think if that one did, this one definitely served up the premise in your mind that was even possible because of what she did vocally on this album. And a lot of people always say that she doesn't have the range for an alto, man, but people don't understand. Like, yo, when you can sing. Like, even if you're into your alto, contralto, whatever it is, like, you can still display range.
Yeah, all you got to do is go listen to her B7 album. I think that came in, 2020?
Yeah.
She's giving you every Hey, she's giving vocal lessons on that album. She's hitting so many different ranges in there. I was like, oh yeah, Brandy still got it.
She said about this album when she was interviewed about this in '99, she said, "I'm not the little girl I was when I made my first record. My voice is a strong instrument now. My vocals come from both my heart and my diaphragm. My heart because I matured in the 4 years since my last album. I'm more emotionally there." So that just goes to just speak to what we were talking about since then. But to me, one of my favorites during that year, in a big R&B year, but also in those 25 years since then, when I talk about the impact that it had, you talk about some of the people that were influenced from this album. Like, it's crazy when you start going down the list of people who talk about this album and how it influenced them. Now we're going to go into our favorite part.
Highlights and lowlights.
So I'll go ahead and start with you, Damo. Your highlights and any lowlights if you have them.
You know, all the singles are the highlights. You know, you got Mace and his bag on there. Harlem World styling.
Oh yeah.
I was like, okay. So yeah, that's that beginning Mace back then. He was definitely one of them rappers. You get him on an R&B joint, you know it was gonna be a smash.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was a perfect pairing. Yeah,
perfect. You put him on an R&B joint, that joint is a hit.
A hit. Yeah.
And then you know you have Never Say Never. Then that actually name other album that's on that joint right there. Hey. I need somebody to love me like that right there.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Right.
I need somebody to love me like that right there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the one voice that she's really going in on there. And I'm just listening. I said, dang, this is kind of the joint I kind of don't like that I would have as my low light. I said, but she is tearing this joint up. So that would be my low light of the album. But like I said a couple of minutes ago, her voice just make you be like, I really can't hate it because she killing this joint still.
Yeah. Indeed. True. Yeah.
Maybe everything I do, that might be a throwaway too.
Yeah, that's a remake though. Yeah.
It's a but it's still her voice though. It's still her voice that still carry the joint. Like, I don't really like this joint. Maybe y'all did a favor for somebody, but she still killed this joint.
Yeah, man. Not mentioned as well in the singles, Angel in Disguise, because that definitely was a single as well. To me, man, the singles are all highlights here. We talk about highlights. The Boy Is Mine is just one thing, man. But On Top of the World with Mace, like I said, Mace was one of those rappers, you put him on an R&B track. He's like one of those, like in that time period between like maybe 95 to like 2000 of rappers you put on an R&B track and it was going to be a hit. You know what I'm saying? It was going to be a hit. But we talked about Angel in Disguise. Little known fact, a lot of people don't know that Joe actually does background vocals on that, uncredited, on Angel in Disguise. Yes, that Joe, the Joe, R&B Joe. You know, I Want to Know Joe did background vocals on Angels in Disguise. And to me, Have You Ever, which is a song written by Diane Warren, and when I heard it, and then someone said that Diane actually wrote this track, I said, you know what? This makes so much sense to me because this is a Diane Warren. You think about the same vein of the other tracks that Diane Warren has written, then yeah, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Unbreak My Heart. Yeah, Till You Love Me, Because You Love Me. That makes sense. And she also flexes vocally on there. And she's also talking about a very mature subject matter on that song. You know, someone who's 18 years old, you know, talking about
that's the song.
What would you
that's
do?
The song I meant. That's
oh yeah, Have You Ever?
That's the
one.
Oh yeah,
that's the joint, dog. Like it's joint. Yeah,
that's the one I meant. I was like, yeah, I need you to love me like that.
Yeah,
that's what I need you to love me like that. Right there. Man.
Yeah, man.
Shit, at 40, that joint bottled up some emotions and me listening to that joint. I was like, hold on. The pollen count high?
Yeah.
Got me feeling away.
Got you feeling away. Man, yeah, it's crazy. One of my favorite tracks on here, it might be my favorite track on this album, is Almost Doesn't Count. Messaging and Almost Doesn't Count is just crazy, right? Just the lyrics on there. That song is a song that is produced by Fred Jerkins. You know, it's produced by Fred Jerkins. It's written by Guy Roche and Shelley Pelkin. And it is a song that whenever I think about it, I think that's some of her like best mature and crossover work there, because that's a song that resonates for a lot of people in a big audience, not just our group and our audiences, but to audiences of different races because of the sound of the track. And when you start thinking about those lyrics, and almost doesn't count. I mean, it's just like, just the bridge alone. I can't keep on loving you 1 foot outside the door. Ooh. I hear a funny hesitation of a heart that's never really sure. Can't keep on trying if you're looking for more than all that I could give you than what you came here for. Like, what? How many people can relate to those lyrics, bruh? God damn. And then the thing about it that I love is, like, she gets like another lyric on here as well. She says, you can't get to heaven half off of ground. And everybody knows that almost doesn't count. And that's just, oh man, I love this song. I love it, and I've loved it since then. And go ahead, you were going to say something.
It actually it's kind of like a saying too. Yeah. Because people say like, oh, I almost did, well, almost doesn't count. But that song comes to your head, like whenever somebody say like almost, so you're like, yeah, almost doesn't count. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so the one thing I will have to say about this, man, Brandy's bridges and her hooks to her songs are so critical, and this album shows that. Like, when you hear the bridges on some of these songs, man, these bridges are so epic. And I got to give props to the writing team, from Brandy, everybody that Rodney had on their team, all the other writers on here did a masterful job of putting some of these bridges together and then making them go and melt like almost seamlessly right into the hooks. The hooks are off the hook on this album. Big props to them for putting this together. But when you talk about some of the other, like, the album tracks on here that are highlights, and you mentioned some of them, man. The album tracks on here, like Learn the Hard Way, and that being so smooth. You Don't Know Me and Happy. Signature Darkchild sound production on there. Like, it got a little bit of that bounce to it. You can feel it, like, you know what I'm saying? Those hi-hats and definitely those drums in there definitely come rolling through. And you get a ballad, like, truthfully. Which is produced by Harvey Mason Jr. and was co-written by Marc Nelson. Marc Nelson, who used to be one of the original Boyz II Men and also wasn't As Yet. Also did background vocals in this as well. A lot of people didn't also catch that. Another one of those uncredited background vocals that you can't really hear. In the background, you hear Marc Nelson singing though, right? And then to me, one of the things that I love about this is that you have some singers on here that can provide those background vocals, not just aside from Brandy's, that can give it that depth. But then other songs like Put That on Everything, and then also One Voice, which gives you that gospel feel to it. Like, sort of like, as a matter of fact, One Voice was actually the UNICEF's 50th anniversary theme song. So you want to talk about the depth, everything from gospel to pop to R&B to ballads. It gives you everything. Like, literally, the trick bag is full in this album. It is 100% full. So looking at these singles, man, honestly, Damo, you can look at these singles. These singles bring you from summer of 1998 pretty much all the way up until spring of 2000. Yeah. This album definitely had some heat on it.
It did, man. It had some heat. And then not only that, but it had some staying power. And you want to talk about some of the things that inspire people. Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears both said that this album helped serve as the inspirations for their own debut albums that will follow a year after this joint came out. You want to talk about influence. Yeah, you start touching artists then who became the biggest pop artists at the end of the decade into the first part of the 21st century. Yeah, that's massive influence right there. So, and what it did also was it made us see Brandy in a little bit of a different light. Like, she wasn't just going to be a teeny bopper singer. She was going to be a full-fledged woman that was going to have a voice that was powerful and then also lyrics that meant something.
Final verdict.
So, Damo, what say you about Never Say Never? Is this a classic? Is it an essential album? Is it dope? Is it just good or okay?
If you would have asked me for today, before you told me, I was like, it was a dope album. Just remembering the singles that I've offered it, just looking at the album, like, yeah, it was a dope album. But after listening to it, I listened to it about 3 times since you told me. I hit you up this week, made sure it was the right album. I was like, okay, I listened to it. I said, all right, okay. I listened to it the first time, I said classic. I said, let me listen to it again. And I'm going to have to stay with the first verdict I had when I listened to it the first time. It's a classic. It ain't really I can put it in and just ride.
Yeah, yeah.
No skips. Yeah. That's a classic to me.
No skips. It's a classic. One of the best albums of the 90s R&B wise by solo artists. And shoot, when you start putting it up there with artists, solo and groups, it's still one of the best ones out there. It, to me, is an album that helped to establish Brandy as a certified star and that she was here to stay. Vocally, it helped to establish her as someone that had some staying power, and lyrically, it helped to establish her as somebody that will become a formidable writer in her own right. And what it did for Darkchild, it helped Rodney Jerkins come from an up-and-coming producer that was on the rise to being somebody that was a superstar R&B producer and music producer over the next decade. And you talk about some of the people who Darkchild worked with after this Brandy album. I mean, you could run them down. He worked with Tony. He worked with Michael Jackson. He worked with Destiny's Child. These are all the people who Rodney started working with afterwards, and he became a household name when you were talking about music was concerned. I
don't even think they knew his name no more. I think they knew it was
Darkchild. Yeah, exactly.
When that happens, it's a wrap.
Right.
It's like the boy now. All you know is Hitmaker.
Hitmaker.
You like, this about to be one of them ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's about to be one of them ones.
Yeah. And for Rodney, it started a beautiful partnership between he and Brandy, because the next couple of albums that Brandy put out, including Full Moon, they did together. He produced. And then also the fourth album she ended up putting out, it was an album that they produced together as well. So you want to talk about Never Say Never? Yeah, it's one of those albums you have to have the conversation with when you're talking about R&B albums in the 90s. And when you talk about Brandy, it's definitely the album that I think that made her not only from being a star, but it made her a superstar. So I like to talk about that this was sort of like her album to what Secrets was for Toni Braxton. Toni was a star before Secrets, but then Secrets made her a superstar. It made her a pop icon. Brandy's Never Say Never. Make sure y'all go check it out. 25 years old this past week. Make sure y'all go check out the album. Also hit us up on social media. Let us know what your favorite tracks are, your favorite videos as well. What did y'all think about Darkchild's production? Hit us up on social media. Let's talk. We'd love to continue the conversation. And that is going to wrap up yet another edition of The Vault. Please make sure you are visiting us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. There you can learn more about the show, check out our past episodes, join our mailing list, leave a review, or if so inclined, you can leave us a voice note. Click the blue microphone in the bottom right-hand corner to leave us a voice note to let us know what you think about the show, or to just show us some love. To support the show, click the coffee cup shaded in yellow in the bottom left-hand corner to access our Buy Me a Coffee page. On Buy Me a Coffee, you can give a small monetary donation to support the show to ensure that we can keep the vault open for many years to come. You can also visit us on social media at Vault Classic Pod on IG, Twitter, and on TikTok. Also hit us on YouTube and our Facebook page. Like and follow us on social media, subscribe to the pod and the YouTube channel. We do it here all for you. We appreciate the support, and if you have a friend, tell a friend, and make sure that that friend tells a friend. Always remember to keep your headphones on and your music loud, but not too loud. And as we close, we'd like to remind everyone to dream big, because dreams are the basis for creation. Always create, motivate, and elevate, because you were never destined or created to stay stationary or ordinary in this life. And on that note, we say peace.
Thank you for listening and coming into The Vault. Please subscribe and visit us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com.